when you know your why, you realize it's so much bigger than you. It takes a little bit of pressure off of you. It becomes about so much more. It helps you understand why you need to show up. It helps you understand why you need to be consistent, why you need to ship, why you need to contribute. Because making a contribution really matters, because we aren't going to be here forever. And, what do you want your life to be about? The why really connects all of that.
Here's the key to my front door. You got a pillow if you lost yours. You got a seat at my table. You got a here's somebody who believes you. Let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
Welcome to The Creator's Journey. I'm your host, Charles Gupton. Each week, I'll talk with creative leaders who face the same fears and obstacles we all face. What makes these folks effective are the processes they've developed that allow them to push through the darkness to consistently ship their work and make a difference. If you've ever felt that your fears and insecurities are getting the best of you, know that you're not alone. Every creator who works from the heart faces the same challenges. Come join our community at thecreatorsjourney.com for ideas and inspiration that will bring light and direction to your journey.
Here's the key to my front door. You got a pillow if you lost yours. You got a seat at my table. You got a home. Here's somebody who believes you. Let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
Before leaving the advertising agency environment, Nadine Prada worked in the roles of both art and creative director at some of the most recognizable agencies in the world, including Ogilvy Mather, Arnold Worldwide, Saatchi Saatchi, and Young Rubicam. During that time, she racked up numerous awards for ad campaigns created for clients including Dove, American Express, Volkswagen, Toyota, and Tylenol. But about 6 years ago, she left that world to become a freelance art director so that she could devote more attention to her own vision as a painter. Nadine is also passionate about encouraging other artists to create and make a living from their work, and to educate the public about how to demystify and enjoy art. We met as presenters at Essential Edge, a conference for artists in Raleigh this past year, and I was intrigued with both her work and thought processes. I immediately asked Nadine to carve out a time that we could chat some more. Welcome, Nadine.
Well, thank you, Charles. What a lovely introduction. I'm very pleased to be here.
Most people go about their daily lives as if there's a lot of time ahead of them to get all the things done that they want to do. But I remember from your talk that you had an experience in Chile that shifted your point of view about life and work. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how it started changing where you've come from since then?
Well, oh my goodness. Well, the experience in Chile, I would say at the time, probably the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me, but I would say it was the greatest gift I've ever been given, because how often do you get to experience an 8.8 earthquake and live to tell the tale?
No kidding. If
that wasn't going to change my life and give me new perspective on what really mattered, I don't know if anything would have. So I almost see it as like a divine intervention sending me there to wake me up, because some people get woken up in their lives, through various circumstances. I kind of needed such a big, I needed a big shakeup, I guess. The universe decided that I needed an 8.8 earthquake to wake me up, because I had been in a position where I felt like I was working at the best ad agency in the world. I describe it as almost like the Super Bowl for women. I was working on the Dove campaign for Real Beauty. I was working with people I loved and adored. I was working with top photographers and directors and very talented people. I was doing work I believed in, but there was something missing. And that something missing was because I am really meant to be an artist. I'm meant to be a teacher, a speaker, and that wasn't happening. So I was sort of stuck in this old life, not ready to jump into the new one. And going to Chile changed everything, because as I've alluded to, I was in an 8.8 earthquake at 3:30 in the morning. It lasted 3 minutes. I thought at one point I might not make it through. And I 3 minutes is long enough to literally go back through your life and to know, what is it that I want to do? Hopefully this doesn't sound too morbid for everyone. What is it that I want to do with my time here? Because my time here is finite. Time is our most precious resource. We're not here forever. And I actually sat there in this room that was almost like if someone had walked in, turned all the walls to jello, put me on a bucking bronco, and that thing really wanted me off. It was violent, to say the least. And in all of that being shaken up, wondering if I was going to actually survive, I had a moment where I consciously thought about all the people I wouldn't see again. But what really, really broke my heart in that moment was thinking that I always assumed I would have more time to become a full-time painter, to do all of this teaching work that I now know that I'm on fire to want to help people to understand the power of art and access it in a much deeper way that transforms their lives. And I just thought, geez, I've blown it. All I've done is work. I've really screwed up here. And so when I came home, I did actually start to make changes pretty much immediately. And within a few months, my life changed dramatically. And I've never been happier and never looked back.
I remember also there was a moment where you realized you just come back from a conference and you were excited about some ideas. You walked in, and before you even got to kind of process that, you immediately had a presentation project dumped on you that had to be done in under a day. And there was another, if I remember correctly, there was another shift that happened in the wee hours of the morning about your art. You want to talk a little bit about, there seemed like there were two inciting incidents in your story that moves you forward. Mm-hmm. You want to touch briefly on that as well?
Well, yes, good question. What happened was I had been sent to this conference in New York on all things internet, and it had been a 3-day conference. I remember feeling like Neo from the Matrix, as if the entire internet had been downloaded into my brain. And I was all excited to come back and give a report to my creative directors because they were expecting me to share what I'd learned with the team. So that we could all benefit. And I walked in early, and I remember feeling like I had a bucket of ice water dumped over me, because instead of being able to give this report, I was immediately asked to work on this crazy presentation. Anyway, long story short, cut to 5 a.m. in the morning. I remember there was this moment where I looked over and I saw my reflection in the window of my corner office, which was a big, beautiful corner office. And I looked at myself probably for the first time the way someone else would have seen me in this moment, in the middle of a huge office building, completely alone, in the dark, thinking, well, what's wrong with this picture here? And that was the moment when I was intensely, I was very, very frustrated. And it wasn't just because I was working late. And it wasn't just because I was alone and other people had left before me. It was because I thought, you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be an artist. What are you doing? It was this moment that, it really galvanized some things for me. And I guess it was no accident that shortly after that, I was sent to Chile, where the big, huge recognition, the big shakeup happened. So yeah, it was this moment of clarity in the wee hours of the morning, in the pitch dark, seeing myself reflected back at myself.
Yeah, that was powerful to me. And I had those two events in reverse order. I was thinking the after conference event happened first, but it's even more powerful that way to have that realization, then go have your life literally shaken. After internally being shaken, to externally be as well.
Yeah.
Talk with me a little bit about the importance of branding as it applies to creative leaders and artists who are presenting their offerings out into the world. Because I often see artists who are good at and really interested in a lot of things. Maybe it's part of being ADD, but they dilute their brand impact by being too spread out in their interest. Mm-hmm. What do you have to offer in that area of counsel, since you've come out of a branding for other people environment now you're doing it for yourself and helping other people in the creative spaces?
Well, it is very, very important thing to figure out, and it can be very confusing for a while. I've seen people struggle with this for years, and as you say, some very talented people just put out a diluted message because they don't really understand how it's being perceived. And I would say it really matters, because unless someone gets a cohesive idea of who you are and what you're about, they can't trust you. It's like if it's too scattered and you're putting out all different types of things that don't really seem unified to the person who's taking it in, it seems a bit schizophrenic. They can't really get a hook or a handle on who you are and what you do and what you have to offer. And then you also can't align with your tribe. So when you take the time to understand what is your story, what is your brand, what are you all about in a cohesive way, and you start to consistently put out that same story, that same message, other people can then have this very deep experience of who you are, and they can be attracted to exactly who you are if that alignment makes sense for them. They can actually understand and see you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it makes sense for me when I'm looking at other people. And then when I look at myself in that figurative mirror, I realize or at least I fear I'm doing the same thing, because I have been a still photographer for many years, started moving into doing motion work, but I was excited about doing this podcast. I enjoy writing, and the through line for me is curiosity, asking questions, and developing story. But I think from the outside world looking in, how does that tie together? How do I see my own branding? And I look at other creative leaders that they're doing things, but frequently in their work lives, it's difficult for them to present to the world a unified vision. So it's on my mind a lot. That's why I wanted to dig into that a little bit. So yeah, so it does make sense, but I'm still struggling with it, get it out of my head and actually living it.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to make it clear, like, it's great to have lots of interests, and for someone such as yourself, you have a long career as a photographer, going into motion, and then doing this wonderful podcast. A big part of your brand is the curiosity and showing up and shipping and encouraging people to do that. That's sort of like, it's an outward facing thing, but in your work as a photographer, you're probably known for a certain style of photography. It's it's fine to be multi-passionate. It's just sometimes it's a challenge to understand what is the through line, what is my message, how am I being seen, how are people going to find me, how am I being perceived. It's tricky because you need other people to mirror it back to you. It's a really interesting thing too, because I was at an art fair this past week, and it's one thing I'd like to say, it's very difficult to do for yourself, and it does take some time and some experimentation.
Exactly.
I was looking around at this art fair, and also had to practice what I preach a little bit as well, because it is hard to see. It's hard to see when you're in it. You need help. You need other people to help mirror it back to you. Sometimes it's a lot easier to do that with help. So what was happening is I was walking around and looking at other artists' booths, and some of them had such a wonderful, cohesive experience. They had their thing down, and some of them were really smart and had put a little blurb about themselves on the wall. They had their story down. They had their look and feel down. They had everything. It was just a wonderful, cohesive experience. And from very far away, this could be a really good analogy. From very far away, you could very easily see who they were, what they were about, and what they were doing. So if you were attracted to that type of thing, you could easily just go and spend time in the booth, and you would want to spend more time if that was your thing, and you'd really get it. You would really get what they were about, and you'd be very attracted to them. Whereas other artists had a little bit more of a scattered vision, and it's that thing we were talking about, being a little bit schizophrenic. And one or two pieces might have grabbed you, but because it was very scattered, you didn't really. It was almost a subconscious thing where you didn't really know completely what they were about. And then there was